Hello, welcome to 4 Tracks Good. In this episode, we'll be reviewing our most recent Vinyl Club meeting. I'm on the hunt for my co-host Neil, who's hopefully tracked down one of our members, Andy. I'm in Bramhall Village in Stockport. They said they're in this amazing bookshop called Simply Books, and it's right behind me here. So let's go and see if we'll find them. Just walking up the stairs. I'm hoping they're going to be sitting up here. So we're going to be discussing my most recent Vinyl Club meeting where the theme was orchestral. It happened a couple of days ago. I'm hoping Neil and Andy are going to be in this lovely bookshop. Just walking through here.
Hello.
Nice to see you both. This is a fantastic location you found to discuss Vinyl Club.
It is. This is Simply Books. As you can probably tell by the title, it is a bookshop, and it is located in the village of Bramhall. We know we like to put a bit of history into our episodes. In fact, that's probably why most people tune in now. I think it was the 17th most popular YouTube channel amongst A-level history students in the East Cheshire area. And Bramhall, for those who don't know, was in the Domesday Book. It was 1086. We don't know if Simply Books was in the Domesday Book. But, there was 5 households, which put it in the smallest 20% of all of the territories recorded in the Domesday Book. So, a little bit of Norman history here.
The show wouldn't be the same without your history lesson, Neil. It's something I think the majority of the viewers actually tune in for.
Andy must be the highlight for you hearing that.
I'm here for the history, yeah, definitely.
Indeed. So less and less music, more and more history. That's what all the letters are saying. The bulging post bag.
They are. I mean, we spend hours opening those letters, don't we, Neil?
Our intern does.
Yes, our intern. You won't see many comments on the episodes. That's because people, just a little old-fashioned.
That's true.
Like to use...
I like to make sure that I reply to every single letter, and I have done. It's gone. But we are here to discuss last Friday's Vinyl Club. And we're here with one of our long-standing members of the Vinyl Club, Andy. Good afternoon, Andy.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Bramhall.
Thank you. As a resident of Bramhall, we're on your turf.
Also, Bramhall, also home to the 7th oldest park run.
No way.
Yeah, it was the 7th one to start in the world.
In the world?
Yeah. And it's still going.
When did it start?
It was about 20 years ago. Yeah.
You've done it, presumably, several times.
Yeah.
Gary, are you a park runner?
I have done it. Nah, maybe I haven't done it, actually. Maybe I've just watched. And it's exhausting to watch.
Run from parks when I was a kid. When I was playing football on the tennis courts or something. Or
the other week, it was the 777th Bramhall Park run.
And how many runners? Were there 770? Did they stop?
There's normally about 350. Yeah, it's quite a big one. Very hilly, though. You're up and down all the time. It's quite tough.
Going round and round and round with all your joggers.
Yeah. It does give me an enormous sense of well-being.
Yeah. Well, we've gone from history to sport. Are we going to end up on music? That's the question.
Yeah. I think most people are hoping we don't. No. So So as people will know, that we have a theme for each Vinyl Club evening, and this particular theme was chosen by Andy, and it was orchestral, wasn't it? So, and we can interpret that however we wanted to, and we did. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the choices. But I think to kick off, Andy, I think everyone will be dying to know why you chose orchestral as the theme.
Well, I do like an orchestra on it. I've always held to the theory that there's no song that can't be improved by adding an orchestra to it, as I think the Pet Shop Boys have shown throughout their career. I do like an orchestra. Just throw the kitchen sink at it. that nice lush sound. My preference is for big productions. I love Trevor Horn productions. One of which I chose as one of my selections. That sort of combination of pop tunes and orchestral arrangement and backing, I think works really well. Now, it was probably about a year ago, about this time last year, when I chose this theme. And at the time I was listening to, or about to listen to, I think it came out at the end of April, the most recent Pet Shop Boys album, Nonetheless. Every track on there has an orchestra on it, and it's got a very lush orchestral feel to it. And so that sort of got me thinking, well, what about other tracks that have got orchestras on them, and what could we all come up with? And we came up with some good ones.
Yeah, certainly did.
Yeah, we could. It's music with literally with strings attached. So I was waiting to throw that one in. That's the one bit of preparation I did for today. And I think you touched on it there, though, about the role of the orchestra. You said that no piece of music could fail to be augmented by adding an orchestra to that. Why is it? What do orchestras bring to a piece of music that might improve it rather than just sort of leaving it without an orchestra?
It's partly, I mean, a good string section, you can really bring out the chords and the harmony, and also just adds a sense of drama, I think, doesn't it? You think about film music, there's something very dramatic about a pop song with an orchestra on it. It's just big, and just throw everything at it. I mean, the Pet Shop Boys have obviously, throughout their career, I think the first song they wrote was Jealousy, and they waited until they were big enough and had enough budget on their album to record it with an orchestra on their fourth album, wasn't it, Behaviour?
Yes.
But then since then they've regularly gone back to doing productions with orchestras. This most recent album was with James Ford, who's a great arranger of orchestral parts, and it's just I like big sounds and big productions, and you can't get much bigger than sticking in a string section or an orchestra on a track.
Now, are you a fan of an orchestra on a record, Gary?
You know, I'm not a massive fan, I have to say. So I was pleasantly surprised on the evening that I enjoyed pretty much all of the tracks going. I mean, there was a whole range of orchestra, how you define orchestra on there, weren't there? There were quite big orchestras and just a small string section, but I liked every one of them. And so I think my thinking when the theme was first announced is that it's going to be an evening of classical music. And I was going down that route, and I'm not a huge classical music fan, so as soon as you go off on a tangent and look elsewhere, there's certainly lots of things to pick from, aren't there?
Yeah.
Across all sorts of genres, and we heard that on the evening, a real mix of genres with that orchestral element.
And I was trying to think about the different ways in which orchestras have been deployed over time. If we think about modern pop music having its origins in the early 1960s, when is it the pop bands started to add orchestral arrangements to it? And I was trying to think, when was the first time that the Beatles or the Stones added an orchestra to a song? And I probably should have done my research and found out, but I'm sure somebody could tell us, but I can't remember. And it's why would they do that? And I wondered if part of it initially was to add a bit of, one of two reasons maybe. One, add a bit of substance to suggest that pop isn't necessarily ephemeral. We are talking about artists here as well, and gives a bit of musical authenticity maybe. But also, I think if you think that most pop songs are using a combination of 4 or 5 different chords, it does add that variety initially. And then as you move through the 1960s, you see that the string section and orchestras generally are used to add that gravitas and depth, as you said, Andy, or even take a song completely differently. And I suppose the most obvious examples, from apologies for using the Beatles again, but are something like Eleanor Rigby, where that is. I don't think anybody plays on that apart from there's an orchestra. We'll take that as read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's. Is there any guitar on it?
I don't. Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, can do. Yeah. And then A Day in the Life, where the orchestra there is used to take it somewhere else, isn't it? It really does add something different, and obviously George Martin, his classical background, helped arrange it. It's something that McCartney was really interested in as well, because they weren't the only band using orchestras, and as you start to see later in the '60s. Moody Blues even do an album with the London Symphony Orchestra. Days of Future Past, is it? It's one of those early ones, and again, it's to add the sense of this is not just pop. This is something more serious.
And you think of, Dusty Springfield always had orchestral arrangements. The crooners, that side of pop relied heavily on
Burt Bacharach.
On an orchestral backing, and I think that really from the start of popular music, there has been an orchestral element to Motown, and then disco, of course. Disco was, you've always got orchestral.
I guess that's where it loses its appeal for me, when there isn't a real orchestra on there, where it's synthetic or electronically composed. It's that kind of takes the shine off it a little bit for me. I don't know what you think.
Not necessarily. No, I think it's. If we go back throughout the ages, music has been produced on a range of different items, even if they're not instruments as such as well. So, if you're using something very primitive to create a rhythm, it might not be a drum. So I think the fact that you might be using something electronic to reproduce, even like a mellotron, which of course takes orchestral sounds and choirs, doesn't it, as well? I don't think that detracts from it as well. So long as it is there for a purpose and adds something to that particular
Maybe I'm just
song.
a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to...
We actually we attended a New Order gig where they played with a synth orchestra, didn't we? And at the Manchester International Festival in 2017, was it?
Close enough, yeah.
I think so. And there was this. They were from the Royal Northern College of Music. And there was this bank of synthesizers behind them, probably a dozen or so synth players, all playing, I guess, different parts, different chords, but together it created quite an orchestral sound.
It's very rich, wasn't it? So that's probably picking up that point you said there, Gary, where New Order anyway would use synthesizers to recreate certain sounds. Here, they managed to, I think, take it somewhere else completely and add a real depth and variety to every one of their songs, didn't it? I think with that orchestra, it was fantastic.
It just sounded bigger. Bigger and more.
I guess the technology has moved on considerably since maybe when that sort of thing, experimentation was going on.
Getting back to the Pet Shop Boys, sorry about the going back to the Pet Shop Boys again, but on their second album, actually, they recorded a song called "It Couldn't Happen Here," which was arranged by Ennio Morricone, so he did an orchestral part for it. I can't remember why, but for some reason they couldn't actually get an orchestra to record it. Probably couldn't afford it at that stage. So they played all that on synthesizers, and listening to it, you can't really tell that it's
really. Gosh,
it's
you've ruined the magic of the song.
I know I was very lucky to attend a concert they did for Radio 2 in 2012 with the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra, and they said that was the first time they'd actually played it with a full orchestra.
Wow. Because it does sound incredibly authentic.
How does it compare with the full orchestra? Does it sound just different or better?
To say, I suppose it probably sounded a little bit more authentic with the actual orchestra. But having said that, like Neil, at the time, I just assumed it was an orchestra on there.
Yeah. Probably should have read the credits a bit more closely. No strings were harmed in the making of this song. But of course, throughout popular music, it's not unusual for an artist to lose control of their song and just for it to be given to an arranger, because the producer thinks it'd be great if we threw absolutely everything onto this in terms of an orchestral arrangement. And I think probably one of the most famous or infamous examples, and at the risk again of going back to the Beatles, is during the making of the Let It Be album, where McCartney writes and the band records Long and Winding Road, but long history around this, but The producer Phil Spector decides to put a different string arrangement on it, not arranged by George Martin, and McCartney hates it. And it's part of his legal case against the Beatles is that he says that they've taken his work and they've destroyed it, and he wants it taken off. And of course, eventually he does. Does it the
Naked, Let It Be Naked, which was about 2003, wasn't it? And he just recorded the whole thing again, or did he re-record it, or did he just use the original?
I think they originally took the strings off.
Takes, didn't he? But took the strings off it. I prefer the original, to be honest.
Oh, do you?
Get the strings on. Yeah, get the strings back on. I don't want it naked. Put some clothes on.
But I think it's true. I think it does sound a bit Mantovani-ish, doesn't it? I think
Yeah, and actually, I mean, I think particularly the Long and Winding Road, which I think was the one song that he really didn't like the orchestra on, whereas I've always loved the orchestra on that. But it's I mean, it is a bit over the top, isn't it? The orchestral arrangement on there, it's very Phil Spector. I bought Let It Be Naked, and I thought it was a bit disappointing. Really, I thought I prefer the original.
On that, did he also going off top? Did he also boost his guitar solo or change guitar solo on Let It Be, the track itself? I think he put down a guitar line for it, which he wanted, because that's the one that was famously where George Harrison says, "Well, I won't do the accent. Just tell me what you want to play, and I'll play it." But I could be wrong there, but I thought there was a solo that McCartney did, and he put his on Naked.
I think possibly on Let It Be, maybe on Let It Be. There was a slightly different solo on there. Yeah.
MPL, if that's not true. But yeah, I suppose if we talk about Friday and the choice, as you said, Gary, the range of it's incredible, wasn't it?
It was, and I think round one of the evening was probably one of my favourite rounds over the last decade that we've been running. It was just a beautiful selection of tracks, really, that seem to go really well together. And you'll find the link to the Spotify playlist in the comments if you'd like to listen. But yeah, they just went well. Round two was strong as well, but I thought round one went particularly well.
Yeah. What were your favourites of round one?
Round one, I think it's difficult. I'd be hard pressed to find a favourite on the evening. To be honest, nothing because the quality was so high. Yeah. Nothing really stood out. I mean,
I like the Salts record that you.
Well, obviously, I couldn't pick my own as a favourite.
I thought it was great, and that's got a choral section on it as well.
Yeah, and that's what drew me to that particular track. It was a little bit different, and I do like that choral section with the orchestral element. I guess overall on the evening, I did like the Peter Gabriel one. I think you chose that one, Neil, didn't you? Not something I would really have listened to, but his voice was amazing on that. And I think at the time we said how many different other people it sounded like. But yeah, that was one of my favourites. But I'd be hard pressed to pick one. Yeah, what about yourself?
Yeah.
Did you have a favourite?
I really like the Salt one. I mean, obviously, I think it's a brilliant Pet Shop Boys album that you referred to there. And I'm a massive Spiritualised fan, so I think with Paul bringing, that on Friday, I think was great to hear that through your speakers as well. It just sounded absolutely in.
Yeah, there was a lot of tracks there was a few tracks I'd heard before, but never played on my sound system. And from the last time I played, it was on a rubbishy little cassette or whatever. And when you hear them, it brings a whole new dimension to the sound, doesn't it? Yeah.
My first choice was Show Me by ABC, the opening track of The Lexicon of Love, and that sounded brilliant on your speakers, Gary.
It sounded amazing.
Yeah.
Well, if you mention ABC, we've got to mention, of course, we are here in Bramhall, and Martin Fry is from Bramhall.
Yeah. Is he really?
He is. Do I have to go on to my usual rant about artists that are actually from Sheffield, but they're from Bramhall. World of Twist, again down to Sheffield band because Martin Fry's brother's in it. Yeah. From Bramhall, Cheadle Hume. This is
Sarah Harding of Girls Aloud.
Yes.
I feel I'm going to have to retaliate at some point with artists from the area. Well, yeah. or surrounding areas. Well, let's save that for another episode. 'Cause I'm sure there are. I know at least one.
But I think it lent its. I think going back to what I said before about the different ways in which orchestral arrangements are used with records, and that was illustrated really well on Friday because of the sheer diversity of artists and genre, didn't we? So we had the sort of the big classic pop song from the 70s with the Carpenters, and obviously we had that sort of updated electro Trevor Horn produced ABC, and Gabriel, and some dub jazz and indie and rap even as well.
Some rap. Joni Mitchell was a great track, wasn't it? Really nice. And then the Carpenters, which was actually, I thought that the Carpenters had originally had an orchestra on it, but this was a new version, an album that Richard Carpenter had recorded with the Royal Philharmonic, I think it was, where they basically done orchestral arrangements of all their classic tracks, and that was Rainy Days and Mondays that Matthew brought, which is a lovely song.
Can I ask a question? I think this exposes my musical ignorance. What's the difference between a symphony orchestra and a philharmonic? Is there a difference?
That is a very good question. And there must be a difference, because I know that there is a BBC Philharmonic Orchestra and a BBC Symphony Orchestra and a BBC Concert Orchestra. Yeah. I presume it's to do with the number of members of the orchestra. And there was some discussion on Friday nights, a little bit of sort of one-upmanship going on about how many members were in the orchestra on each individual record. And I think, was it Steve claimed that there were 120 playing on his record?
I think someone's claiming 160. Was it on the Spiritualized?
Yeah. Paul said it was.
It was Paul's, wasn't it? Yeah.
But I'm sure somebody upped that to 161. I think that might have been a bit of a porky, though. I'll have to do some fact checking on that.
It is. There was a triangle player in the corner that just got them over the line.
So it's been great to catch up with you, Andy, and get your thoughts on the Vinyl Club. Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, you can come back another time. Yeah, as I said earlier, if you'd like to see the selections that were chosen at the Orchestral Vinyl Club, then the Spotify playlist can be found in description. And I think it's an amazing set of tracks. You could release it as a compilation.
Yeah.
No, we should do a concert like they do, like Pete Tong does with his dance classical, and we should just like get an orchestra. Find an orchestra somewhere. They're just standing around on the street corner, and get them to perform all of these songs that we've chosen for.
Yeah, what a brilliant idea. So watch this space. Watch this space on the channel, coming soon. But I think you'd like to say a few words about where we are today. It's a fantastic location for.
It is, yeah. So we started by saying where we were at Simply Books in Bramhall, and we've chosen this venue deliberately, not only because Andy and I are quite lazy and want to go somewhere quiet, close to home, but also it's a really, really good bookshop, and some lovely spaces, and we're in one of the areas where you can have coffee and snacks, and I think they do drinks on a Friday evening, but it's also for a relatively small bookshop. It has an incredible selection of books of all styles. So if you haven't been, it's well worth visiting. I think they've got an online presence as well, but they've also got, it's not a huge music section, but I was really impressed by what they had. It wasn't your typical books as well. There were really interesting ones, not all of which we'd come across before. So just kick off with, I mean, for those of you who are not into music, they've got the Rick Astley autobiography. It's signed on the side, yeah. He's an interesting guy, Rick. Yeah, is that a high bar or a low bar, do we think?
No, I know several people who've met him and worked with him, and he is the nicest guy. Yeah. And he's, I mean, fair play to him. 1987, never going to give you up, and he's still going strong.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would begrudge him that career. I think he writes all his stuff, doesn't he? He plays most of the instruments, and the whole reinvention thing.
The Smiths thing that he did. It's brilliant with Blossoms.
Yeah, how's it go? Gary, what do you miss?
I found this, which is by Lindsay Reed, who was first wife of Tony Wilson. And I've just picked it up. I've vaguely heard of it, but it's a series of letters from Lindsay to Tony, and a bit of a story from her point of view about factory records in general and the marriage and so on. So it looks really interesting read. I think I'm going to buy this today.
Yeah, the one book that reminds me. The one book I do need to read is it called Women in Factory?
Yes, that's another.
That's supposed to be excellent, is it as well? And then the other one, I suppose, it's just following on from that is Uncommon People, Britpop and Beyond in 20 songs. There might be 20 seconds of half decent Britpop stuff out there by Miranda Sawyer, who is of these parts. I think she's from Wilmslow, isn't she? And Once Upon a Time. Yeah, the vivid stories behind 20 key songs of the 90s. So if, like me, you struggle to escape that particular decade, that may well be the book for you. Yeah, so it's a great store. And then Andy, you're going to finish with yours.
Melancholy Undercover, the Book of ABBA by Jan Gradvall, who is a Swedish music journalist who has... I heard an interview with him on the Word in Your Ear podcast, and he got really good access to, particularly to Benny and Bjorn, over the last 10 years or so, while they were sort of plotting their comeback and the voyage, the virtual show. I think this is written in the style of the book whose name I forget about the Beatles, which you read, Neil.
The Rob Sheffield one. The Rob Sheffield one, which is the best book I think I've ever read on the Beatles. Dreaming of the Beatles.
That may be the one. Yeah.
The one, yeah.
Yeah. So it's taking different episodes. So it's not just about ABBA, but it's about Swedish politics and history as well. So this looks like a really good read.
Great. And if you haven't read Dreaming of the Beatles by Rob Sheffield, it's brilliant. In fact, everything that Rob Sheffield written is brilliant. But that's for another episode, probably.
Anyway, Simply Books in Bramhall, great place to visit. Thoroughly recommend it. Check it out. It's got a website, and we'll make another visit, I think.
No, certainly.
Very good coffee as well.
Well, until next time, I'm 4 Tracks Good. Bye for now.